Oh, okay. Welcome to our live stream and podcast Viva YG Latina and Emigrare. We are happy today because we have in this interview at Honorable Dan Williams, Minister of Mental Health and Addiction in Alberta since June 9, 2023. And the co-host today is Mariluz Ingbritson in this program. And we can say welcome to our guest and the co-host. Welcome, Minister, in this program with the Latino community in Alberta and other provinces. We are shared this interview. And the first question we have is, what type of programs having mental health for the newcomers and community in Alberta?
Okay, well, thank you for having me, first of all. I'm afraid I don't speak enough Spanish to do the interview in Spanish, but I have a deep heart and love for the Latino community here in Alberta and across Canada. As we were mentioning before the program, I've traveled to much of Latin America, from Argentina to Mexico and almost every country in between. So I'm very, very grateful to be here and to chat with you today. And I've now been the Minister of Mental Health for a short 4 months. I've realized there's a lot of work to be done. I'm very excited to take that task on, and it's an important piece. I'd say a few years ago, maybe even 5-10 years ago, mental health and addiction was this sort of place where politicians would just sort of talk about as a buzzword, as an important thing, but they wouldn't know what to do with it. Alberta's taken a different approach now. Our government was the first government to create a minister for mental health and addiction. And now we have our first standalone ministry focusing on mental health and addiction. And we're investing hundreds of millions of dollars into the infrastructure, into the programming. It's taken off in a big way, and we realize how absolutely important it is for all Albertans and newcomers, whether they're citizens or not, coming to Alberta. That includes the Latino community. So what you can access are any number of the programs that are available to everyone else. You have a provincial healthcare number, and you'll be able to get access to a lot of it. So I'm happy to go into detail, whether we're talking about on-demand, no-cost, immediate access to counseling. We've doubled the size of counseling in Alberta, and what you can get through 211, which I'll talk more about if you want to. Those who suffer from that deadly disease of addiction, we know that addiction has claimed so many lives, destroyed so many families, and eats away and tears at the fabric of our communities, whether we're talking about the big cities of Edmonton and Calgary or rural communities. And I know there are new Canadians and Latinos coming to Alberta, come here for the opportunity to work, and they're a part of our communities. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them. Even I live and represent the far northwest of the province, and High Level and Macrete and Peace River and Fort Vermilion, and we have your community members there, and they integrate right away into it, but it can be a real change and a challenge. So whether it is a mental health crisis or a mental wellness question, or someone struggling with addiction, we know we need to get those services out. So I'm happy to talk more about each of those and as you come up, but I know, talking to Mariluz before, along with yourself, you have lots of questions. So instead of just going on...
You can start with me, because I like as a popper. I like asking a lot of questions. My first question is, what is the long-term vision to improve the mental health in our community? Because our communities in all ranges are suffering right now.
Yeah.
What is the education system that we implement for people who doesn't suffer with mental health to be able to tolerate them too? Because it's still a lot of stigma about mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people need to be comfortable understanding that mental health is an important thing. And whether we're talking about acute questions around mental health, maybe someone suffers from something like schizophrenia or bipolar, those are very, very diagnosable and treatable illnesses that are real, that anyone could be subject to. It doesn't discriminate based on age or race or ethnicity or language or income. It can get anybody. And so we need to have supports for them. So we're building out the capacity on that front. But also question around mental wellness, which is maybe less acute, less medical, but we know that we need to be supporting families, communities, workplaces to be able to be comfortable talking about mental health. One of the great resources that I mentioned off the top that we have in Alberta is 211. So you can call 211 anytime, and you can get access to immediate same-day mental health supports like counseling therapists, right? This is something that if you're low income or you're not able to pay, maybe a university student or you're in a tight spot, it's a sliding scale. So there'll be no cost to you for that access to a counselor. Or in a different spot, maybe the scale slides up and you're able to support and pay for that. But we have doubled our capacity from 7.5 to over $14 million that we have access to that. So anyone who's struggling with mental health and feels like talking to someone about it would help them, call 211. Let them know you want to talk to someone. And after a number of different sessions, they can even put you in touch with local counselors so you can do work in person as well. This is a good first step, as you say. Well, I mean, maybe it's anything from the cold northern winters all the way to a particular issue that you've been dealing with your whole life. We know as a province that having healthy and well Albertans, whether that be physical or mental wellness, it's important for us. And we're taking very seriously that challenge in Alberta. So that's one great resource to start that anyone can get access to no cost if that's the situation they're in.
Okay, how are we planning to allocate those funds to help the people who doesn't understand what is mental health? And it's a real illness. Mental health is important to everybody, and most of our community are afraid. You mentioned schizophrenia, chronic depression, all those clinical diagnosed patients or guests or clients or whatever we want to call them. How you can allocate those funds, not to only educate the person and the family who live with this person, as well as the community. Yeah. How we can do something like that, because I see the mental health we talk about a lot, you said in the beginning, but I feel that people are afraid to say that they have illness and mental health.
Yeah, I think people
because they're not feeling accepted, or they feeling people not love them because the way they're conditioned, and they are not bad people. They're just people that need extra help.
That's right. They're not bad people at all. They're individuals that could be struggling with a depression or anxiety. It could be really mild at first. The sooner that someone can talk about it and bridge that gap to get the supports they need, the less likely it is that it manifests into something more acute, more difficult. And so the sooner we can do that, whether through prevention or early intervention, the better off that family, that individual is going to be. So one thing I encourage people to do is to ask your family member, your friends, if you're a boss in a workplace, or your colleagues, those in your social circles, ask them how they're doing and follow up with how are you really doing, right? Like really let them have that chance to talk about it. I find that is the most proactive thing individuals can do. And if you find that you're in a conversation and your friend, your family member is looking for more support, you can call 211 yourself and say, how should I be helping this person? We, going through COVID, have found it even more acute, these difficult mental health crises. But suicidality has gone up as well. We see that as there's more and more isolation in our society, especially if somebody's new to a country. They don't have the normal cultural comforts that they would have where they came from. And we're very grateful to have these new Canadians and new Albertans coming to our province for an opportunity to work and put their family ahead so the next generation is better off. But we know the flip side of that is making sure they feel supported and loved in our communities. So you doing your part of reaching out to your family, making sure they're doing well, to those friends and workplace, it really should not be something anyone should be ashamed of. It should be something important that they're comfortable doing, saying, as an Albertan, as a Canadian, I want to be a part of my community. I want to feel healthy. I want to make sure I'm in a good mental space with the supports I need. It's not at all a problem. We have those supports for a reason. So feel free to reach out to family, to reach out to 211 as sort of a air traffic controller, whether it be someone looking for help with addiction or counseling or any number of other issues. It's a great resource for someone to go to get the support they need.
But is any program that the government want to implant or want to increment or want to put it in there for people who are actually dealing like family members? Because usually we treat I work in the healthcare system as well. Usually we deal with the patient. Mm-hmm. But what about the family who take the patient home and doesn't know how to deal with the patient because doesn't have the knowledge that we have?
Yeah, I think this is a huge task in front of us. Latino culture is a good example of this, and it's true to the Alberta roots. Families are integral to the well-being of an individual. It's very difficult to separate family life from the wider life that someone has, and our healthcare system needs to work on this. It's very acute. It's very medical. And when you're in hospitals, you want to have the absolute best possible care. You want to be empirical around that, and there's going to be very clinical nature to it. When we get out of that acute setting and we're an outpatient or we're just in community preventative work, one of the things that we need to do is find a way to have supports that are there, and more often than not, family are the ones that are there supporting, caring for someone, making sure that the medication regime is continued on if someone has a mental health issue, right? Making sure that there's a sense of loving support in that household or where they're being released into, right? So that's a huge task for us in mental health, is to create a system that integrates those familial and community supports. And that's one of the things that I'm going to have to go as I look at not just that acute space for mental health, but also that community-based space, something I might call mental wellness in the community. We need to really, really focus on. And I think it's a great point, Mariluz. Really good point.
Okay. Minister, government and community is very important, the connection and the support, no? Because it's not only the responsibility the government says you need the program, you need because if we are not involved and not participate, we cannot say okay, they don't complete. In that point, what is your advice? Will you give some people, is not your parent, maybe it's a friend, and that you suspect is in a struggling situation with addiction and mental health disorder?
Yeah, good question. I'll give you a concrete example of one of the organizations I think that does this really well. So here in Alberta, we've taken a really strong stand around helping people get recovery when they're in an addiction. And it's a really, really different take than we've seen from a lot of other jurisdictions in Canada. We don't want to facilitate more addiction. The problem that we're facing is this deadly disease of addiction it's found its way into all aspects of our society, and individuals get caught in it. They get captured by the nature of the addiction. So the solution to the addiction, the way to overcome it, is short of death, the only alternative we have is treatment and recovery. And so we've invested heavily in that with 11 new recovery centers across the province, some on First Nation lands, some in our major centers, some in our secondary centers. But we also know as an individual, an Albertan, often a young Albertan, goes through that treatment and goes through the crisis of addiction, potentially having overdoses happen regularly as they consume opioids like fentanyl and carfentanil. We know that we need to be caring for the parents and the families as well. So there's a great group in Alberta that's a non-for-profit that we support through my ministry called Parents Empowering Parents, or PEPs. And it has been terrific about creating a support network for parents to say, you're not alone going through this. You can love your son or your daughter or your brother or your sister in a way as parents and not need to facilitate the addiction, right? Dealing with sort of how do you as a parent get someone into treatment when they come out of treatment? What's the best way for you to engage with them? You can imagine if you're a parent, lovingly want the absolute best for your child, and your child ends up caught up in this horrible disease of addiction, it would be fraught. It'd be really concerning. How do I best support them? Mm-hmm. And you've never had to go through this before. You're not an addiction counselor or recovery coach. You don't know this. So these sort of peer-to-peer support groups that have classes that will do it virtually or in person, depending on where you are in the province, to help you understand that there's life beyond just this addiction, that you can help your family member, really, really important. And we're seeing these pop up across the province in different aspects. And we have the same sort of thing happening when it comes to mental health. For really acute situations as well, where parents need that support, family members need to know, how do I care for this person? And there's just such a power in having it be community-based, where the government supports the community-based organization that grew up organically, saying we're going to provide these supports, rather than government imposing how to do that. So I'm really about finding those community groups like Parents Empowering Parents and making sure that they're thriving. But that's a key part to the question. And I'll say it's particularly acute in our ethnic communities that happily are very family-based. And they're looking for that support. And I want to support them in that desire to find the resources they need.
Is the government planning to open up those projects and that funding for the community to open more programs about mental health, or you just going with certain programs?
Well, I have a mandate letter with 22 items on it, and it highlights my priorities as given to me from the Premier when I was appointed to cabinet. And on that, we have a couple of priorities. One of them is education-based for youth. So we have new programming going into schools, and it's all schools across the province. We're trying to get access through CASA virtual learning classrooms for mental health to help teachers and also to help the children know how to deal with these questions. We're building new CASA physical classrooms across the province. 4 of them are going up. We already have one in Edmonton. We're building them in Red Deer, and Calgary, and I think Fort McMurray. And then we also are focusing as well on a lot of other supports for folks, whether they be Indigenous or new Canadians, can all access it, like I said, through Counseling Alberta. We're expanding that. And we're also going to be working towards more work, like I said, 11 recovery communities across the province. And I'm always open to meeting with new stakeholders, which is a government way of saying the people I represent and I work for, Albertans, whether it be an individual or an organization, they have good ideas on the way that we can advance support for mental health and addiction to make sure we overcome the deadly disease of addiction and give people struggling with mental health and wellness the care and support they need. I want to work with you on that. So I'm very open to conversations with your community.
I would love to hear a little bit more, because you said, yes, we have a lot of places open up, but what places are open up in Spanish, in Hindi, in Punjabi, in other languages, not just in the Spanish community? Because the challenging I find when the people they actually help, and they are my clients, is they are afraid to go because they don't speak any English. They just come, newcomers, or people who have been here in Canada have dedicated their life to work because they have to make it a living, and they don't have the mean to go to a social service or to go to the government or to go to anywhere because they don't have time. They have to go to work. And time is crucial for those people too, because when you overload yourself, you also can burn out.
Yeah,
and that's mental health.
That's true.
Yeah. No, fair points. Yeah, and I'm happy to work with you guys and have conversations ongoing with the government to see how we can better serve Albertans, no matter who they are, where they come from.
Nadie quiere apagones a menos 30 grados. El reglamento propuesto por Ottawa hará inasequible la electricidad. Dígaselo al gobierno federal. Más información www.TFK.
Para crear la abundancia económica con la que has soñado, tienes que entrar en tu ser. Te sentirás rica y contenta. Solo atraerás la abundancia a tu vida pero para eso tenemos que entrar en nuestra esencia, en nuestro yo adentro, para buscar lo que tenemos para dar a las otras personas. Y así crearemos una abundancia inmensa. Bendiciones.
Minister.
Yes.
Since June 29, you start a Minister of Mental Health. What is the challenge that you have in the mandate letter, but also what is the satisfaction that you have with a Minister to Mental Health?
Well, I'd say the challenge is hearing all of the very personal stories. I went to a town hall in my constituency, Northern Alberta, a few weeks ago, and the topic was about a wonderful young man from a farm family who ended up committing suicide. And that story is repeated over and over again across the province, from rural to urban families, from new Canadians to multi-generational families. It's true whether it be the tragedy of a lost life or the tragedy of a life being lost through overdose and addiction, that deadly disease that is a blight on so many individuals' lives. Of course, it's true with mental health, and they struggle with it as well. So hearing these stories, it makes anyone with a heart, hurt. It's really difficult to go through. But the flip side of it is the fulfillment when, even as small as it is, we get something right. When I know that some work that we're doing in government is put to a spot where we can help save a life or help an individual see a light in their life that they couldn't see before. And I really do work on individual by individual basis. I have to. I can't reduce the tragic stats to just a set of numbers that I get in a briefing note. I need to see them all as individuals with dignity, made in my mind in the image of God. And that helps inspire me to say that what we're doing is helping. It's helping and it's making a difference. And that should be an inspiration to me and my whole office to continue to do more. Because as I said from the outset, there is quite a lot of work to be done. We recognize that, but we're happy to take it on because we know the consequences are really consequential for those who are affected. Whether we get it right or wrong, we know that it'll have an effect, and it's my job to do my best to help every single Albertan.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it to hear that because it's important for example, for myself, the working in the mental health with clients and stuff, to hear the government actually supporting programs to help us, coaches, therapists, all of the people that actually working towards helping somebody. Step by step, we can make a great society.
Yeah,
Canadian
I believe that too.
Canadian have all the means for us to help people to be better. And no thinking that if you suffer with depression, if you suffer with schizophrenia, with the bigger the mental health issues, that you're alone. You're never alone. Always somebody there with you. And I really like it to hear what you just said. Everybody is different. Everybody's situation is different. And you not generalize the whole mental health.
Yeah.
Well, Minister, it's the first but not the last time we have here in BYU Latino Emigrare with us. I really appreciate your time that with us to share this message at our community, Latina, not only in Edmonton, not only in Alberta, maybe in other provinces, because they have the same struggle situation, the same problem with the newcomers or people they come in for our countries. And you want to say something in Spanish? You're very welcome.
Oh, no. Es muy difícil para mí hablar en español. No sé muchas palabras, pero muchas gracias a vos. Thank you to you. I have Italian in the back of my head. So you'll forgive me. Thank you to you two for the work you're doing here and having this conversation. As Mariluz pointed out, it is incredibly important to have the conversation, to talk about it for people to feel comfortable, no matter who they are, where they come from, to know that there's supports, that talking about it is a big part of getting the support you need on the mental health side, especially those suffering with the depression and anxiety. I'll tell you, no matter who you are, there's hope. There's hope, for sure there is hope for you. If you feel like you're alone, if you feel like there's no way to recover, if you're struggling with an addiction or a depression or a psychosis or whatever it is, if you, your family member, know somebody who is feeling like they're all alone and inundated with these illnesses, know that there is a lot of hope. Recovery is possible, whether that recovery is from addiction or from mental health. You should feel optimistic that there's a good life ahead of you. Reach out, call 211, go to a recovery community, get the treatment you need. We have a huge amount of resources here in Alberta for you. We care deeply about your success, your fulfillment in your life here in Alberta, and know that there's life ahead of you that's going to be wonderful and happy. So if you're struggling, know that you'll be able to find light ahead. So with that, I'll say thank you for taking the time, and I'm very happy to connect with you guys again.
Thank you so much. Hasta luego, Ministro.
Hasta luego. Gracias.
Bye. People, see you in the next show, and maybe we have the new Minister. Thank you so much, and see you on the next program, Minister. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Gracias.